Good morning and hello again from cTU. My name is Shimon Hochbaum and I will be hosting the webinar on the MultiHaul compact terminal unit and the new software release today. We are going to have a very simple agenda. Talk about MultiHaul, what have we done so far, talk about the compact TU, the new software, and we will finish with a Q&A session. If at any time during the webinar you have any questions, feel free to use the question tool in the GoToWebinar console, and I will be monitoring the questions during the presentation, and I will revisit again during the Q&A to be sure that I will answer all of the questions which were raised. We will also make available a recording of the webinar, the slides, and a written Q&A report if you want, so that in case I would miss any question, you will be provided with the response in writing. I suggest that we start, and actually maybe before we start, I'd like to do a short poll to understand a little better who do we have in the audience and be able to tailor a little bit the presentation to the needs of the attendance here. So I'm going to launch that poll right now. So I have a few questions. Basically, do you have any experience? No, it's a multiple response. Choose all that apply. Whether you have no experience at all, some experience with millimeter wave solutions from other vendors or from cTU and the different types of solutions that we offer at cTU, if you know them already. That will let me know a little better, as I said, how to tailor the presentation. So I see that already a lot of the audience has voted. I'm going to wait another few seconds for everybody to be able to click. Okay, it seems to me that everybody has answered. So I see that we have almost half of the audience with no experience in millimeter wave, and then some wave experience with other vendors, some with experience with cTU point-to-point and point-to-multipoint solution. But I'm really close to half of the audience with no experience in millimeter wave. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining this webinar. I'm going to close the poll now. So let me start a little bit with what we do at cTU, and we are a vendor of millimeter wave solutions and only millimeter wave solutions, which allows us to deliver up to 10 gigabit full duplex, as you can see here on the left, in the lightly licensed spectrum of 70 and 80 gigahertz. And the range that we can achieve is 5 kilometers or 2 and some miles. Some have already deployed actually our solutions up to 6 miles with full 10 gigabit capacity. These radios are larger with 1 or 2 feet antennas, generally deployed on rooftops or towers. Then we have smaller radios operating in the 60, 70, and 80 60 and 70 gigahertz, depending on the model of the radio. So the spectrum now is either lightly licensed or license exempt. And these radios offer up to 1 gigabit of throughput aggregated between the two directions. These are TDD radios. The range is now reduced under 1 mile. And then we have all the way to the right the point-to-multipoint radios, the MultiHaul family, which can deliver about 400 meters of range with a total capacity shared between all the units up to 1.8 gigabit, 1 gigabit per endpoint, and total aggregated 1.8 gigabit. So the subject of the discussion is MultiHaul and point-to-multipoint. So traditionally, a point-to-multipoint deployment looks as we see it here. We have base units which normally connect to the core network and can serve a number of terminal units in the sector, up to 8 terminal units currently. And if the solution requires either longer distances, we saw that it is 400 meters on the previous slide, or if the solution require more than 8 served endpoints, then we can start cascading the sectors, as you can see here on the right, to achieve higher endpoints connected to the network or distances in excess of 400 meters. And a little bit about the way we have implemented the point-to-multipoint solution at Ciclo with our millimeter wave antennas. We implement actually a special form of sector, or special way of doing point-to-multipoint utilizing beamforming. And by that, I mean that if one compares to a traditional point-to-multipoint solution, where the base station basically projects or transmits the same information to all the sector at the same time. In our case, because we are doing millimeter wave, we can easily do a very good directivity with the beamforming which is built into our radios, which allows also to achieve high gain and very good immunity from a lot of things which happen in millimeter wave. So that allows the base unit, in our case here on the top right, to create different beams towards the different terminal units in the sector, and isolate the terminal units, create very high gain, highly directive beams to each of the terminal units, and by changing at any point in time where the beams are aligned to communicate with the right terminal units with the right information. The same principle is also implemented inside the terminal units, and it now allows the terminal unit to find where the base unit is located and create the same highly directional beam from the terminal unit back to the base unit. That highly directional beam is used for receive and transmit of information, of course. The advantage is that unlike the other radios that we have in the Etherroll family, which need to be precisely aligned because there is no beamforming in those, in the Etherroll family, in the MultiHaul family, the beamforming is utilized to create a wide sector, but also to basically bypass the alignment process of traditional millimeter wave or microwave communications. So there are plenty of advantages with the beamforming in the MultiHaul family. And where are the MultiHaul units deployed so far? Plenty of applications, some illustrations here, starting with the left, smart cities, where basically the most common application is video surveillance, but also Wi-Fi backhaul. You see that The multi-hole radios are mounted basically on the utility poles or any type of pole, and you can easily backhaul a camera, Wi-Fi access points, and more, because they bring a complete gigabit, sorry, of capacity to the pole, and from there it's easy to connect a number of devices. Some organizations need to connect facilities within a campus, and they've utilized MultiHaul for that kind of application as well, as you can see here in the middle. And then we have some service providers that have utilized and deployed MultiHaul to connect basically gigabit residential services, fixed wireless access or fixed 5G. That's basically the common application in that case. And you can see basically that MultiHaul really serves quite a lot of interesting applications, and have really helped a lot of different organizations achieve their business goals very easily. And to close the background of on MultiHaul, we have, as you can understand already, a base unit which comes here on the left with 3 ports. 2 ports are copper. One is an SFP for multi-mode or single-mode fiber termination. The unit is powered with power over Ethernet into the port on the left, which is a traditional RJ45. And the unit will draw up to 36 watts when PoE is active on ETH2, the port in the middle. We have today, before this new announcement, 2 types of terminal units. They all look the same, by the way, the base unit or the terminal units, but the features and the port configurations, as you can see, are a little bit different. The terminal units come in 2 variants, 1 port or 3 ports. All the ports on the terminal units are RJ45. On the terminal unit with 3 ports, 2 of them can power additional equipment with 26 or 13 watts, as you can see here on the chart. So I'm going to move now to the cTU, which is a new type of terminal unit that we are announcing today. The terminal units were announced a few months ago and are now on the shelves of most of our distributors, if not all of them. So they are ready to order on a very quick turnaround from our distributors where the units are approved. So in the US, there are no limitations. If we have here listeners from outside of the US, the MultiHaul units are approved for deployment in the UK, in Germany, in Australia, in Japan, and depending on the exact regulations in other countries and in these countries which I mentioned, sometime all of the units can be deployed that we are talking about today, sometime a subset, depending again on the local regulations of each and every country. All the units that we are talking about today, the base unit and the 2 terminal units that we saw, as well as the cTU, are approved for deployments in the United States. So the cTU is 85% smaller than the existing terminal units, and the reason we are doing this additional step is we really want the deployment of MultiHaul to be as easy as possible. So deploy anywhere. Making the terminal unit smaller is, makes it easy to basically hide it anywhere you want, and you are going to see as we go along additional improvements that we have done to make it simpler, faster, easier basically to deploy MultiHaul anywhere an organization, a service provider will want to deploy them. So even though we have made the compact TU smaller, by 1 inch, smaller, height-wise, smaller by 1.5 inch on the depth, and smaller than 2 inch, if I remember well, on the width of the unit, resulting in 85% less volume. We have not compromised on anything else. So the capacity is the same. All the terminal units, the large one or the compact one, start with 100 meg and can be software upgraded to a full gigabit. The scanning capacity is the same. It is still plus minus 45 degrees from center point. The environment is the same, minus 22 to 131 degrees Fahrenheit. The ingress protection, basically ability to withstand dust, rain, and other element challenges, is also IP65, so no compromise there. It is also exactly the same feature set in terms of power into the unit, in terms of provisioning, in terms of bridging and switching, in terms of T201X, basically any other soft feature on the unit is the same, is uniform across all the portfolio. I just would like to draw attention to the auto provisioning, which basically means that all the profile of a terminal unit can be stored in the base unit in advance of the deployment of the terminal unit. When the field technician arrives to the deployment, they just power up the terminal unit. It will connect to the base unit, and the base unit will download the profile to that specific terminal unit according to what it was set from the NOC. So it means that the terminal unit can be even operated without an IP address for management. That's very advantageous because it means now that very large networks of MultiHaul units do not need an IP address on the terminal unit, but one less headache for deployment, one additional less labor. The field technician doesn't need to be as smart or does not need to be trained as much compared to other units. No alignment procedure, no provisioning of the unit, nothing to configure on the terminal unit itself, and you're going to see some other things that we've done. So if I move on to how the compact TU looks like, you can see starting from right to left, the back of the unit, the side, and obviously the front on the left. Looking at the back, we can see the any mount, which allows basically installing a compact TU on a pole, as you can see here on the left, but also flat on the wall with just 3 screws. The drilling pattern for the holes is printed on the quick start guide, which comes in the box. So basically you put the drilling pattern on the wall, drill the 3 holes, and mount the compact TU straight flat on the wall, very easy. You can see again any mount from the side here in the middle. If you want to do a pole installation, it's basically 2 straps which are provided also in the box. There are plastic tie wraps which are UV rated because we don't want to see the units dropping after the first summer. They are black. That's the only way it is possible to get a tie wrap which would be UV resistant. If you see other equipment which is where the tie wraps are not black, they are generally not UV rated, and basically they will drop after the first summer. You can also see at the bottom of the compact TU that there is a protected cable entry, which still allows basically the cable with its connector to go through the unit, but nothing more. No dust, no rain, no humidity. And if we move all the way to the left, you can see the radome with the beam-forming array at the top of the unit, and then you can see a parting line somewhere on the bottom, which indicates that there is a doorway which can open. And we can see here on this slide, basically now the doorway is open so that we can look at what is available inside the doorway. You have obviously an RJ45 connector, which connects the data and power into the unit. The cable that must be used is a shielded RJ45, obviously UV resistant, and the connector at the end of the cable must also be a metallic RJ45 connector, so that the grounding provided by the shield of the RJ45 reaches all the way into the unit. There is also a tie wrap which is available in the box, which basically allows for strain relief of the cable to the chassis and not to the connector of the unit. You can see, to bring up a laser pointer here, so you can see on the unit here the thread where basically the captive screw, which is captive to the bottom drawer, will screw in and lock the door in place. And as I said, the screw in the door is captive, so nothing to be concerned when you open the door. If we continue to look, we have here 3 LEDs, which indicates the status of the unit, power on the right, RF status in the middle. Basically, the RF LED is green, stable. When the terminal unit is connected properly to the base unit, and then an Ethernet LED, which is stable when there is an Ethernet connection, and which will blink when there is actual communication. I think, and here there is an optional ground point that was a provision, sorry, for the case where we would not get safety clearance to not use the grounding point here. As it stands, we have all our safety clearances without grounding the unit independently of what is already provided by the electrical ground on the data cable. So there is just one ground necessary for the unit, no additional safety ground, which means that there is one cable going into the unit, no grounding requirement, no additional grounding requirement, saving the time and the effort and the money to bring an additional safety ground to the unit. If we look at what we have inside the box, so we see here a very compact box for the compact TU. Obviously the radio is in, the mounting kit, as we saw, is attached already to the unit, and the ceiling grommet is already mounted into the drawer. We also provide 2 tie wraps for the pole attachment. These are black, UV rated, easy to recognize them, and there is also a very small tie wrap, which we saw on the previous slide, to do strain relief directly to the chassis and not strain relief to the connector itself. We provide also a PoE injector with an AC plug, which is the traditional US two-prong termination. But again, if there are international customers here in the audience, when we see that the dispatch is to an international, to outside of the US, maybe to Europe, maybe to the UK, the AC cable will match the destination of the order. So don't worry about it. However, if because the T201 is a standard PoE PD device, we've just according to 802.3 AF. So if it would connect to a switch which can provide power over Ethernet, basically if the switch is a PSC, then the T201 will do the proper negotiation with the switch so that the switch will provide power directly to the switch, to the compact TU, and the PoE injector does not need to be installed. However, if the switch is not capable, or if it's maybe another type of device, then feel free to utilize the injector which is provided in the box. There is also a quick start guide which explains how to install, how to power, how to do the initial configuration if that would be needed. And as I said earlier, the drill pattern for the wall mount option is printed on the quick start guide. We do not provide the screws for the wall mount installation because every wall is different. Sometimes we need one type of screw, sometimes it's a different type of screw and anchors. It's not easy to predict and provide something which is useful, and it's very easy for everybody to carry the right set of screws. So we have not added the screws in the box. And as I said earlier, unlike all of the previous MultiHaul or EtherRoll radios which we sell where the ground cable is included, in that case there is no ground requirement, and therefore we do not provide the ground cable, so don't go and look for it. You don't need it. You can just install the unit with a shielded RJ Cat5 cable or better. Currently, the T201 ships in or is available in a single off-white color, as you can see here on the right. That's the same color as our larger MultiHaul units. But because the unit is all plastic, it's going to be very easy for us to start and make available colored version of the compact TU. For example, the black or the gray would be very useful if one wants to install the compact TU on a utility pole. The brown brick would be more interesting for deployment on a traditional home, if that would be the case. So whereas the off-white can be ordered in any amount, 1, 2 or more, there will be MOQs for the colored units, but please let us know what you would like to see in terms of colors, and we'll try to make the MOQs as palatable as possible, but there will be MOQs. In terms of part numbers, there is one new part number which reflects the new compact TU. It's MHT201, etc. Anything else that you would already know how to order for the MultiHaul family, the base unit or the other terminal units remain available. And obviously the capacity upgrade, if you want the compact TU to arrive or later to be upgraded to the full gig, then you need to order also this upgrade from 100 to 1000. But that's not a new part number necessarily. In terms of documentation, what is the support package for the compact TUs? Obviously, the datasheet is available already on our website, but if you have access to our portal, most of our, all of our partners do have access. So you have again the same datasheet. You have A&E documents, a user manual, product description, standard documentation package of cTU is available on our portal already. In terms of software tools, which are available as a service, the link budget calculator has been extended to support also the compact TU. So you would select MultiHaul as the A side, and then the B side can be either a TU or compact TU. And the reason we ask you to pay attention to that is because the compact TU has a shorter distance compared to the larger TU. So obviously, if you want to predict your link and the availability properly, you need to decide whether you want to do that with the larger or the compact TU. And if in the cases where you see that the availability might not be as you want, then you can easily switch from compact TU to the regular one and see if that will solve the problem. For the audience who is familiar with our wireless network design engine, Windy, you can also select TUs or compact TUs as the baseline unit in your network and make adjustments during the bill of material if you prefer. But at the end of the day, when you have designed your complete networks, the bill of material reflects already where you want compact to use or where you want regular to use. Price calculation, bill of material, configuration files, all that are going to be produced accurately since we have upgraded Windy a few months ago with the support for the compact use. So I'm going to switch now and talk about the software features that we are adding in addition to support of the compact TU, obviously. So one thing is, we're improving the software upgrades. Today, most of the software upgrades are done where you upload, one would upload the software to the unit, and then one would tell the unit to reboot to apply the new software. Which means that somebody has to come overnight if it is preferred that the reboot will not occur during some peak traffic hours. And we are now making it possible to schedule basically the reboot at any desired time of day in the next 24 hours. So you can basically upload the software during the regular business hours, schedule the reboot during a maintenance window, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and the MultiHaul units will reboot autonomously during that time. If all goes well, they will continue running with the new software. If not, they will autonomously revert back to the current software. That happens today even if you do a manual reboot of the unit to try the new software. So it's very safe to do that unattended. And obviously, in the next morning or two, one can check the units and see if all the reboots have completed successfully. And then in that case, one can accept the new software so that if the unit would reboot again in a few weeks or months, the new software would be would stay active and not that the unit would revert to the previous software by mistake. Along the calendar activities, we are doing something with respect to the features and the license. Here in the case of MultiHaul, it's just the capacity, where basically if you want to try whether the capacity is something which is going to be interesting for your customers or for your applications in general, you can basically, you don't need to order the capacity license from us firstly. You can just go ahead and trial for 30 days. And if after a week or 2 or 3 you decide that the capacity is something which is valuable to you or to your organization or to your customers, then you can proceed and order the license from your distributor, from cTU, depending on how you buy the units, and basically upload the capacity license, at which point it will stay permanent. If you see that for some reason maybe some other part of your network is not able to support the new capacity, then you can stop the trial for a few weeks, let's say after a day or 2, and then you make the additional adjustments in your network and you can start again the temporary activation. And if you have stopped the temporary activation after, for example, 1 or 2 days, then you still have 28 days to continue the trial. So it's the total of 30 working days that the license is active, that is good for the trial. If by mistake you did not apply the permanent license on the units, then when the 30-day period expires, the unit will revert back to the previous status. So in the case of MultiHaul, the MultiHaul base unit will revert from the 1.8 gigabit capacity to 500 megabit. The terminal units will revert from 1 gigabit to 100. Again, after the 30 working days. Additional features that we are bringing out is information about the orientation of the beams in the sector. So if you look at the base unit, you can see basically where the terminal units are located relative to the center point of the base unit. And and for the terminal unit, you can see where the base unit is oriented, corresponding to the center point of the terminal unit. And as some of you who have experience, or if you don't, as I said earlier, it's plus minus 45 degrees. But we don't have really a wall or a cliff, and if the terminal unit is at 46 degrees, in many cases it will connect, but we are just like to highlight that, and we color code the angle value in red in that case, so that one would realize that these terminal units are maybe marginal in the sector. If you see good performance, stay there. If you see that the performance is marginal for those terminal units which also seem to be marginally outside of the plus minus 45 degrees, our recommendation is to plan an additional base unit, or maybe to realign the base unit if you can, if it's not going to bring another terminal unit outside of the alignment. No. And same for the terminal unit. If you installed it casually on a pole and you see that it's not within the 45 degrees, then it's now an opportunity to adjust. If it was installed flat on a wall, but it so happens that the wall doesn't have the correct orientation with respect to the base unit, then it's basically a good idea to bring a small pole, and we have such an accessory now in our inventory solution. So you can just bring a small pole to the wall, and now rotate the terminal unit in a better orientation facing the base unit. Some walls are just not as good as others, as you can understand. And we are also making it possible to manage terminal units with IPv6. So obviously the traffic can be IPv4, IPv6, because we are just a smart bridge, but there is no routing feature in the terminal units or in MultiHaul in general. So it doesn't matter what is the nature of the service traffic that you run to your devices or your customers. However, if you want to do management with IPv6, it is now possible on the MultiHaul, as well as we make it possible on our other radios at cTU, if you are interested. So IPv6 for management is now possible. So with that, we have covered all what I was planning to present. I'm going to look at the questions which have been asked and which I might not have answered already. So no, I have here a question on alignment. So it is true that with traditional millimeter wave or microwave, because the antenna gain is relatively high, the aperture of the antennas is generally very small. A traditional 1-foot dish for millimeter wave has just a 1 degree aperture. The 2-foot dishes have even smaller aperture, half a degree. So yes, the alignment must be very precise. However, what we have here with MultiHaul is beamforming. There is no alignment. The beamforming will do the magic on its own, as you could see here. I'm going to bring the slide again to try the illustration. So that would be this slide, and oops, sorry. So here you can see the beamforming really is something which happens because of the smart antenna array that we have under the radome, and which will steer electronically the beam toward the terminal units, or from the terminal unit back to the base unit. That happens basically at electronic speed. Doesn't even take a second to adjust. And the field technicians have nothing to do manually in terms of alignment. Base unit is normally aligned toward the center of the sector, and the beams will be created electronically by the base unit toward the terminal units at the speed of the electronics, so basically instantaneously. And the terminal unit will do the same. It will find where the base unit is located and will start aligning its own beam again with something which doesn't even take a second. The alignment actually happens multiple times during any second, so that even if there is any pulse way, maybe you have mounted a terminal unit on the utility pole, somewhere in the middle of the street with these extended arms of the traffic lights, which can sway in the wind. And as I said, because the alignment occurs multiple times within 1 second, there is nothing to do manually. So it's something about the size or the illustration. I'm not sure here if the smartphone which we see on the left is any Android or one of the iPhone X. That may show to the kind of smartphone I use myself. But basically what we wanted to convey here is that the compact TU is roughly the size of a smartphone. It's very easy to install discreetly in many locations without any preference for the type of smartphone that one should use. Is it possible to spray paint as opposed to order a color coded compact TU? First of all, it is possible to spray paint. However, one has to be careful and utilize a paint which is not metallic based, because any metallic based paint will interfere with the millimeter waves and the performance of the radio in general. That's true for MultiHaul, that's true for our point-to-point units, the Etherroll family, that's true for any millimeter wave radio. So users with good experience and who know how to select their paint have done it successfully. However, the paint may deteriorate over time, and generally speaking doesn't look the same uniform result as one what can do with really color-coded compact TUs. As you can see here on the slide, we don't paint the unit, we inject the plastic with the desired result, and the result is the quality is more uniform. It's better looking in general than something which is painted. But obviously there is this MOQ expectation which might not work for everybody. I see here a question about the elevation profile. So the coverage angle of the antenna is plus minus 10 degrees vertically. For the TUs, for the compact TUs, and for the BUs, all of our units, it's the same performance. As I said, we try to keep it uniform across the portfolio. Plus minus 45 degrees horizontal, plus minus 10 degrees vertical. Remember again, for these two directions, there is no wall, there is no cliff at the end. Obviously, for the longer links, you want to stay very clearly within these guidelines. For the shorter links, you will discover that even if you stray quite a bit, if you think about a base unit on a building which may be 20, 30 floors high, and if you have now, a unit which is on a utility pole in the parking lot under that same building, very likely that you would still get coverage even if the base unit points very far out, because you have a building which is maybe 200, 300 meters away that you want to reach as well. A question here about quality of service and controlling controlling basically the throughput and the capacity. So yes, we have tools in the unit to first of all identify traffic with higher and lower priorities, and make it possible basically to prioritize traffic within the units and over the air. Obviously, control within the unit is perfect. Control over the air is not as perfect. We also have rate limiters which can be tuned in to for the BUs and for the TUs, and make it possible to restrict either customers or endpoints where you want to make sure that they don't abuse the network. So you can tune in, you can turn on, the rate limiters to help and facilitate this if you want to. Looking for the other questions. So there is a question here about the dashboard or the GUI. I don't have a living unit that I could connect to right now from the conference room where I'm running this webinar from. But if you're familiar with Etherall or MultiHaul, our GUI allows, in the case of Etherall, to see basically the two ends of the link on the same screen, basically. So it doesn't matter where you connect to. On any side of the link, you see the two link right away. If in the case of MultiHaul, if you connect to the base unit itself, you will see the base unit on the left and all of the terminal units on the right, and you can zoom in into one of the terminal units more precisely. But again, the idea is that from one screen you can control the whole sector. If you have connected with the IP address of one terminal unit, then you can see the terminal unit and its base unit again on the same screen, but you cannot see the other terminal units, and that's obviously for safety, if you want, or for protection. I see here a question about the wall mount. So I'm going to go back to this slide here, zoom in again, try to hit. So basically wall mounting the cTU is very simple. You drill the 3 holes which correspond to 1, 2, and 3 here using the drill pattern which is on the quick start guide. You screw in the 2 screws and slide the cTU down into the first 2 screws, and then when the drawer is obviously open during installation, you basically screw in the 3rd screw via this hole, which will basically go and lock down the cTU firmly in place, not wobbling or anything else. So very simple wall mount installation. I see here another question about the power. The power is coming in via the data cable, standard PoE, or using the injector coming in. You need no more than 10 watts, so any PoE capable port on the switch will power the cTU, or you can utilize the PoE injector if the switch is not capable. Are there more questions? Okay, no more questions, so I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this webinar. I hope I was able to answer all of your questions, but if not, feel free to reach out to me. My contacts will be again in the slides, which will be available in a few days. But if it's something which is more urgent, very simple. It's Shimon, SHIMON.H @ctlu.com, or just try via our general email, hello@ctlu.com. I'll do my